Few more sponsors to thank before we bring up our last speaker. Thank you to Stan Campbell and Mike Darter of CCW Safe. If you're a concealed handgun carrier or you have a firearm to defend your home and are forced to use your weapon for self-defense or for the protection of a loved one, you'll be glad to have a CCW Safe on your side. CCW Safe has permit and non-permit plans to protect California residents in this state. And while traveling across the country, you defend your life. CCW Safe will defend your freedom and financial future. Thank you, CCW Safe. Where are you?
I think they might be out with Phil Neiman.
Got it.
All right. And lastly, we want to thank Damian Burnett, owner of Quick Auto Part Salvage and the state executive officer for the American Patriots. Thank you to Quick Parts as your one-stop shop for replacement parts. Get recycled auto parts and truck parts from Quick Parts, a well-regarded business in San Bernardino, California since 1971. Thank you guys for sponsoring today's conference. Appreciate you guys.
All right. It is such a pleasure to welcome our next speaker. Charlie Kirk is the founder and president of Turning Point USA. Who's heard of Turning Point?
Oh, yeah.
That's a national student movement dedicated to identifying, organizing, and empowering young people to promote the principles of free markets and limited government. With representation, this is so cool, on over 1,400 high school and college campuses nationwide and over 150 full-time staff members, Turning Point USA is the largest and fastest growing conservative youth activist organization in the country.
All right. He's a regular on Fox News. He's a columnist for The Hill. Charlie is the best-selling author of Campus Battlefield. He is waging that war with his organization, Turning Point USA. Give it up for Charlie Kirk.
Also, we are going to be doing some live questions with Charlie, so he will be taking your questions in just a few moments.
I'll leave this up here just in the event you want to roam about the cabin.
Okay. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. It's been a long month this week, but so pleased to be here. Just in the last week, I was at Penn State University, University of Missouri. Nothing controversial has ever happened at the University of Missouri, right? University of South Dakota, Nashville. I was at the rally last night. How great was that rally, right? I was at the rally last night with the president. So proud of him. I love seeing our president being in front of middle America, not the media elites, on a Saturday night at that White House Correspondents' Dinner. But for those of you that don't know, I'm the founder and executive director of now the nation's largest conservative student organization, Turning Point USA. Thank you. I started this organization when I was 18 years old in the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. The fun thing about being from Illinois is we have term limits in Illinois. It's a little different than most states. It's 1 term in office, 1 term in jail. So when we ask for our governor's cell number, actually mean his cell number. My grandmother was a lifelong Republican from the north side of Chicago. She passed away in the mid-1990s, and she's been voting Democrat ever since. So you might wonder how a kid from Chicago with that kind of political culture started an organization like this. Fun thing about Illinois, we are the most bankrupt state, so we could take that label from you. We are probably the most corrupt state by far, but we have some very good political history and some very not so good political history. So yes, we are the state that gave you Barack Obama and gave you Hillary Clinton. But we're also the state, believe it or not, that gave you Ronald Reagan and Abraham Lincoln. So I think it balances out, right? People don't know that. Ronald Reagan grew up in Illinois and actually went to college in Illinois. So did Abraham Lincoln. So Turning Point USA, we've grown from this idea that was just in my garage when I was 18 years old. We're now on 1,400 high school and college campuses across the country, fighting the battle where it matters most. Honestly, I believe the college campuses will determine the future of this country. The fight on our campuses have never been more important. And I'll prove it to you because I do a lot of speeches on campus. I do a lot of speeches to groups like this. And a couple years ago, I remember speaking here in California to a wonderful group of patriots, and I said, I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to make a prediction that there will soon be a member of Congress who's clueless, young, probably ethnically diverse, will be constantly wrong but never in doubt, will talk more about their hatred for America than their love for America, and will be an outward socialist. And the audience almost laughed. They said, oh, no, that will never happen. How did I know that we would have these clueless, brazen, yet committed members of the left coming to Congress? Because whatever happens on campus will soon happen in Congress. Whatever happens on college campuses will soon happen in the halls of Congress. So the battle that's happening today on college campuses, the culture war battle, which, by the way, we have been losing for the last 40, 50 years. And it's worse than losing. We haven't even fought. We have not even fought. And I'll go a step further, that most of the people on our team, Team Freedom, Team Free Markets, fund these universities with their donations. That the universities that are doing the most damage to our country, Yale University, Stanford, Brown, the biggest buildings, the largest endowments, the donations are from conservative business people. The hundreds of millions of dollars, the billions of dollars. Harvard has a $48 billion endowment. And I guarantee you, if you went and did a study, at least 80% of all that money was from registered Republicans. So we have people that believe America is the greatest country ever to exist, that succeeded in that country, benefited from the free market, and they voluntarily give up their money to the very institutions that will teach the next generation to hate the country that they were successful in. And it's as if our own dollars are fighting against ourselves. And I'll tell you, you don't get people like Rashida Tlaib, you don't get people like Ilhan Omar, you don't get people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We'll talk about her in a second because I got plenty to talk about with her. They just don't come out of thin air. Do you understand? It's really interesting. Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, she's the greatest example because her language is so parallel to that of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. How? And I'm going to give you a point that no one has mentioned in media. It's the professor and the student, literally. Professor Warren, she was a professor for 25 years at Harvard. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was a student at Boston University. Same community, same intellectual, leftist brain trust or lack thereof. How do they come in such agreement on basically every single issue? Student loans, get rid of them. America, horrible place. Electoral college, abolish it. How do they come into agreement with this? It's because the universities are the most important cultural institution that conservatives have ignored for 50 years. And the universities are where you get liberal professors. And so culture is really determined in 4 or 5 really big areas. First and foremost, the most important cultural tradition in human history is the family. It's the family. It has withstood more civilizations. It's withstood more wars. The family is under direct attack by the cultural left. The nuclear family. How did they do this? Well, first and foremost, through bad public policy, through incentivizing, particularly look at the black community, where 78% of black children will never know their father. You know that. The fatherless rate in the black community is 78% because we literally pay black mothers to have children, and then we have government regulators come around to make sure fathers are not in the home. Our tax dollars are actually funding fatherless absence in the black community. So we destroyed the family that way, but also we destroyed it in the sense that we teach students now, teach young people that, no, you don't need to get married to be happy. You can go pursue a career and be happy. This is where you have these 35, 40-year-old voters that are just angry at the world because they've never gotten married. They've just put career and self-indulgence first. And they want to blame somebody else for their problems. The first is the family. They destroyed the family. The second of which is the community / the church. And boy, has the left done a good job recently of taking over the church. Am I right? My goodness. My mother grew up Catholic. I did not. I grew up in the Presbyterian church. I had to leave the Presbyterian church because when I went to church, it was more about political doctrine than with theology, trying to justify the political doctrine, than theology and then maybe talking about what's going on in the world. Now understand, when I go through these four instances of culture, the left is relentless at destroying things at work. They will never stop. If you think they're just going to stop taking things over because they're now winning elections in California, you're wrong. They will come to every church. They will go into every community center. They will deteriorate every family because they are a force of deconstructionism. And I'll tell you why. Because I have the opportunity to know the left better than almost anyone else because I fight them every single day on college campuses. Second of which, of course, is the community and the church. The left is destroying the church from within. And there's still some great churches, amazing, thought from the pastors, but also the Johnson Amendment. The Johnson Amendment passed in the 1970s, which was designed to silence pastors, designed to silence churches from ever talking about politics. So the left has done it that way. The third way that culture is determined is our news gathering institutions and the way that we tell stories. So first, of course, is the media, the newspapers, the television. And I honestly agree with the president when he says this. This is a bold statement. I believe the media is truly the enemy of the American people. I really do believe that. And I've done a lot of thinking about that because did you see the recent study? 44% of Americans still believe that Trump colluded with Russia. 44% of Americans are not that stupid. They're not. But they are that trustworthy of these institutions because we've been programmed from a young age to believe, well, if it has a nice title on television or it's in the New York Times or it's in the Washington Post, it must be true. And still to this day, people believe that Trump colluded with Russia, despite Hillary Clinton being the one that actually colluded with the Russians and with foreign governments. We'll get into that in a second. But the first, of course, is media. The second part of this, and we have been just run over. If you want to look at a society or culture's values, look at their stories. The Bible's the greatest book ever to exist in the history of the world. It is. It's the greatest book. 66 books. 35 authors, stories that are replicated and duplicated in the entire Western civilization canon. Isn't it interesting how that's the single book they refuse to teach in our schools? Even from a secular perspective, you don't have to teach a religious book as religious doctrine, by the way. This is one of the great lies the left has taught us, that all of a sudden you introduce the Bible, it has to be taught as religious doctrine. No, it's not. Jesus was not just the Savior of the world, he was also a historical figure. So learning him as a historical figure is equally as important as learning about Socrates or Plato or Napoleon Bonaparte or Alexander the Great. In fact, he was the most important person ever to exist, even from a secular lens. Our calendar is based on this. Our language is based on this. Our values are based on this. And yet it's the single book we decide not to teach our kids. And so the Bible was the way that moral people, Christians and Jews, conveyed their values to young people through stories. It was actually mostly through oral tradition, and then eventually they wrote it down. But if you want to know a society or a culture or a civilization's values, look at their stories. So you look at the stories that built Western civilization, the stories that we tell our kids, and the stories that we teach our youth. Of course, that's changing. But what are these stories? Well, the story of Moses, the story of being under slavery, obeying God, listening, and then fleeing that bondage into freedom. That's the story, isn't it, of the original religious pilgrims, isn't it? That came from Europe to America. It's a variation of an Exodus, isn't it? Isn't the story of Joseph, which is one of the great stories in the Bible that's never talked about, right? Patience, obedience, being falsely accused of something, right? Obeying God, interacting with the highest levels of power. What am I getting at here is that this is how you understand a culture's values. Of course, we don't teach the Bible for a lot of different, I'll tell you my theory of why that is. But the stories we tell students today are not based on that Judeo-Christian ethic. It used to be. It used to be for a small sliver. We actually used to be telling the correct types of stories. And then something changed. The correct types of stories were what used to be on television, Leave It to Beaver, The Munsters, right? Where you had a nuclear family. You had a young boy trying to figure out how to properly assimilate or grow older in a functioning society. And he struggled with this. And the value system was always you would rely back on the nuclear family. But what's the value system we teach now to our students or to our young people? It's Jersey Shore. Hook up with as many people as you possibly can. That'll bring you happiness. Get blackout drunk. It is The Bachelor. And I guarantee you there's some Bachelor fans in there out here. I'm not one of them, okay? I think it's a vapid show. It's a waste of time. By the way, I lose a lot of young people when I talk about that, but I don't really care. By the way, here's a good lesson. Just speak truth, and then if people follow you, great. You don't need to just pander to people. It's a great lesson for life. So The Bachelor is literally, this is how we teach young people. This is what we teach young people what love is. It's a competition between you and 12 people. No, we laugh, but that's the values that our 10-year-olds and our 11-year-olds are consuming. This is on network television. This is on ABC, where people actually think that their values, well, I'm going to find love if I'm going to have some sort of, Wheel of Fortune way of going about finding love. It's also Modern Family. Well, Modern Family is good. I'm talking about the other one. That Modern Family is actually the Tim Allen is great. It is Modern Family. I get those confused. Last Man Standing is great with Tim. He's great. Modern Family, not so great. I'll correct myself. Not so great. Tim Allen is great. It's one of the few. And that's why they canceled him. And then they brought him back because people like us were like the one thing that we were going to watch on TV. I correct myself. But what am I getting at here? This is the third way that culture is formed. It's through stories. And the left has taken over all of our storytelling in our culture. The movies that we teach the next generation. And it's not, so here's the funny thing is that the best movies, the ones that sell the best, are actually conservative values inherently. They can't actually sell good movies without having conservative values within them. So I'm going to prove it to you. So what is Western civilization? The Western civilization comes from the Judeo-Christian ethic that the individual matters. It's the hero's journey. So you can be born in a less than desirable circumstance, make good decisions, face evil head on, which is a uniquely Christian value, facing evil head on, whether it be Jesus in the desert facing Satan head on, or whether it be Jesus on the cross facing his persecutors head on. This is a Christian value, that you're going to be up against evil and you're going to be more courageous, and you might not win, but you have redemption in the end. This is a Christian value, okay? What are the three stories that every young person admires that have sold billions of copies? And they're basically all the same story. It's Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and Star Wars. Those three stories are all actually Judeo-Christian stories. Now, they'll never teach you this in the schools whatsoever. But the reason they're so successful is that everyone can relate to them in one way or the other. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with Star Wars in one way. They're all exactly the same story. It's an orphan that is born underneath, he is raised underneath a staircase by his uncle. Or it's a guy that is raised on a desolate planet, Tatooine, that doesn't know his parents by his uncle. Or it is a guy that grows up in the Shire by his uncle. Okay, you see a little bit of a continuity here? It's literally the same story. And then what happens? They go away from their home, right? They go to Hogwarts. They leave Tatooine. They leave, and there's a journey there, right? There's a pull, there's a separation, and they have to figure out who they really are. And what they realize, and then they create a small team of people that have different skill sets, usually someone who's quirky. And again, this is based on the idea of teams matter. Even Jesus had a team, right? He built the team around disciples. So teams matter. This is a Christian idea. But then here's the kicker, and here's where it all comes in with Western civilization, is that the greatest evil is not external. The greatest evil in Harry Potter was not all the people that wanted to take down Harry Potter. It was the evil he had within himself. The greatest evil of Star Wars, Luke Skywalker, was not actually fighting all the people of the Sith Empire. It was actually fighting himself. It was his own temptation to become a member of the Fallen. The greatest struggle in Lord of the Rings, Frodo Baggins, when he's about to destroy the ring at the end, was him actually being tempted to join evil himself. So the struggle of the individual, that's what Western civilization is. It's like, oh my goodness, do I do this? Good and bad. This is exactly what we as Jews and Christians and people who appreciate the Bible, that's what our book is all about, isn't it? That's what King David struggled with his entire time. And he fell short, and then he overcame. And he was a guy after God's own heart. But this is what the Bible teaches. And so anyway, the three books, the three big stories that we all love and our kids love are built on these ideas. And we celebrate it because at the end, they overcome it because they dig deep and they face that evil. And in Harry Potter, the second volume, they slay the snake. Or, in Star Wars, Luke Skywalker literally comes up and, kills his father. I mean, could you imagine a more difficult scenario where you have to actually face that? What's the point here? These are traditionally conservative stories. Now, let me tell you what happens now when the Hollywood gang, not right down the street, they sit around, they're like, well, let's impose our culturally Marxist, leftist ideas into these stories. This is what it would be. Harry Potter, raised by his uncle, applies for welfare at age 10. At age 14, he realizes that he has some identity problems and gets on medical marijuana. Loses almost all ambition, goes to the local community college, changes his gender, becomes a local community organizer, and says, there's no such thing as Hogwarts. It's such a horrible thing. Goes on this weird meandering path that we have to feel sorry for him. And he becomes a victim for the rest of the movie, and it kind of ends on a weird melancholy note. That is Harry Potter according to the American left. It's a boring, horrible story where ours is heroic. It's facing challenges. It's overcoming obstacles. It's not forming local community groups and, picketing and protesting. We have the stories because we have the values on our side. And the worst performing movies that the left puts out are the ones that are actually the ones that embrace their very value system. So that's the third way that you can take over culture, and they've done that, is through the storytelling. The fourth way, and this is where I spend almost all my time, because I make the argument that the fourth way actually is the only one that foundationally influences the other three. The stories matter, information matters, family matters, all that. But the one that is the screwdriver is the college campuses, academia, high schools, elementary schools, and college campuses. That's the one where, and I think everyone would agree with this, you could get the three right. You could have a nuclear family where you read the Bible every day and you go to church. You can have all the correct media consumption. You can have all the correct movie watching, and then you send that kid out who's a conservative to UCLA, and he comes back by Thanksgiving and says, this is not Thanksgiving, it's National Indigenous Peoples Day. And are we eating turkey? That's not vegan. Did you ask the turkey permission before killing it? By the way, we're all so privileged. We're privileged. This is what they do. And I'm sure all of you have seen this, right? You send a kid off to college and it comes back a social justice activist. And this is where the fight is so important, because the three matter. Don't get me wrong. The family matters 100%. The media matters. Don't get me wrong. It's hilarious when I say that. Media matters. If you don't get the joke, good. You probably live a great life if you don't get the joke. If you don't get the joke, you've never heard of Media Matters. I want your life. Whoever's never heard of Media Matters, I want your life. My gosh. But the college campuses are foundational. And the left realized this, folks, is the left in the 60s and 70s, they placed a huge bet, because the greatest generation, they wanted what was best for their kids. They wanted peace. They wanted prosperity. They had saw such horrific suffering. And they fought forms of communism. They fought forms of fascism. They fought this totalitarian mindset. They didn't want it here. But what did the Marxists do? Through the Frankfurt School from the 1930s on, they infiltrated our colleges. They infiltrated the colleges of education, and they've been so effective, haven't they? And now you have a country where you have elected members in Congress that are outward socialists. And I consider that to be insulting, beyond insulting, to the millions of people that went and died to fight communism and socialism all around the world, to the millions of Vietnamese, to the millions of Chinese, to the millions of Koreans, to the millions of Cubans that fled socialism to come here to America. As I like to say, we have grandparents that crawled through mud and evaded gunfire and came on rafts and escaped prisons to now see their grandkids advocate for the very idea that almost killed them 60 years ago. There's something sick about that. There's something sick about that. And students are inherently the perfect population to teach socialism and communism for. But it's not just the teaching of the economics of socialism, which there is none, because socialism is at war with economics. It is the basic laws of economics of the price system and finite goods. There's no, socialism can't exist in that world. But what they teach instead is at the most foundational level is they do not teach the value of victorhood versus victimhood. When you have a generation, an entire country that is built around being a victim, that thinks you're owed something because you exist, it is so easy to get up on stage and say, you deserve free health care. Because they've been told they deserve something their whole life. Socialism can be sold only if a culture and a society is not mature. What do I mean by that? It's an immature way to go about selling public policy. Because when you have lived through life, when you have gone over obstacles, you have a sense of correct level of pride in coming over those obstacles. I don't have to pay for somebody else's free education. I don't have to pay for somebody. I overcame this obstacle. I have this job. I worked 3 shifts. But instead, students are told the exact opposite, that you're oppressed just because of your existence, that you're a victim just because you've been told you're one for 20 years. And this is the perfect opportunity for these exploitationists like Bernie Sanders and Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren. And deep down, I think part of them, I think they know better, but Bernie Sanders is an unbelievably dangerous American politician. He is. This is a guy that he's dangerous. He really is. He honeymooned in the Soviet Union. I want you to imagine this. I want you to imagine you get married. It's one of the greatest times of your life. Hey, honey, how about Stalingrad? But do you know what really horrifies me? Besides the point that I don't even know how the heck they got into the country, that he saw it, that he saw the Soviet Union himself, and he still wants to bring it here. So what did he see that he liked? What did he see in the Soviet Union that he liked? Well, definitely, maybe he liked the millions of people suffering from famine. Maybe he's more masochistic. I don't think so. No. He saw how well the elites lived in the Soviet Union. That's what he saw. He's a bitter man, filled with contempt. He couldn't make it in a market economy. He couldn't make it without selling other people's goods and services. It's very easy to be generous with other people's money, isn't it? It's very easy to promise somebody else's money, but once it's your own, no, it's the billionaires. You know my favorite thing? I call him Breadline Bernie Sanders, by the way. I'm trying to get the president to use that, Breadline Bernie Sanders, as his nickname, right? I like that. Thank you. So my favorite thing is he always, in the 2016 campaign, the millionaires and the billionaires, right? Always. Now it's just the billionaires. Do you notice that? He's gotten rid of the millionaires. Listen very carefully, because he's a millionaire now. Now here's a very important takeaway. is he says, well, if you write a book, you can be a millionaire too. Okay, well, hold on a second. I've read Marx. I've read Engels. I know what drives you. I thought each according to his ability, each according to his need. If there is a need for your book, why didn't you put it online on your website for free? Why did you sell it? Why did you make millions of dollars for $27 a copy from people that are working minimum wage jobs? Bernie, most of the people who bought your book, that's like 4 hours of work for them. You exploited the American middle class to get rich. He's a hypocrite. And this is fundamental, because calling out the hypocrisy of the left is not just fun, it's not just effective, but it is evidentiary. Because conservatives, by definition, we never live in contradiction or hypocrisy with anything we believe. And I will prove it to you. I want a wall on the southern border. I like having walls in my house. I want a wall on the southern border. I have no problem with gated communities. I love guns. I love the Second Amendment. I love firearms. I have no problem being walked around by armed guards. I love private schools and I love school choice. I have no problem with parents sending their kids to those schools. But the left, Beto O'Rourke, Robert Francis O'Rourke, never call him Beto again, by the way. Robert Francis O'Rourke, he is as Hispanic as Elizabeth Warren is Native American, okay? Seriously. So, the media comes out, they say, well, Robert Francis O'Rourke, they don't call him that, but they should. Robert Francis O'Rourke announced his candidacy for president in his native language. So I turn it on, I'm like, I see him speaking, I'm like, I didn't know, I thought he was going to be talking in Gaelic. I mean, I just want you to imagine something, that if Trump just came out, and this is something he should do though, where he's just, I will now go as Pepe Trump. Just Pepe. What? The media's like, you can't do that. It's cultural appropriation. Now, somebody when I was young called me Pepe. You have to call me Pepe. This is what the left does. And Robert Francis O'Rourke, to all the amazing Hispanics I see out there right now, he thinks you're stupid. Robert Francis O'Rourke thinks Hispanics are stupid because he thinks that they'll just vote for him if they see a Hispanic name. Seriously. And they have the gumption to call us cultural appropriation. Are you kidding me? And he has that fake Hispanic name. Anyway, so I'm trying to think of where I was before I got on Robert Francis O'Rourke. He's talking about, so he announces, I was talking about Bernie, I was talking about native language, double standard, got it, okay, double standard, exactly. So Robert Francis O'Rourke lives in a gated community in El Paso. He does, and then he goes and he says, I want to tear down all the walls in the southern border. The left says, sanctuary cities, they're the greatest things ever, love, right? And then the president, my gosh, do I love this president? He says, we're going to send them all there. Right? I agree. I thank God every day we have this president. I really do. I really do. He's a gift. I really do believe this, by the way. And I hear people all the time, well, he's not perfect. I say, oh my goodness, not. Who exactly? Who is? By the way, here's the greatest, and I'll get back to the double standard. Here's the greatest example for who Donald Trump is and why you have to justify that. People say, oh, he tweets too much. He does all these things, blah, 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 bad pass. If I'm drowning in the middle of the ocean and I can't breathe, water's coming through and all this, and out of nowhere a lifeboat comes and a lifesaver pulls me out and resuscitates me, I don't care if the lifesaver had tweeted too much before he pulled me out of the ocean. I don't care about the lifesaver's past history. I don't care about the lifesaver's decisions 30 years ago. I don't care about what the lifesaver did with Deutsche Bank 40 years ago. I'm just happy I'm not drowning anymore, right? I'm happy I'm breathing again. A bunch of nonsense. You got all these fake Republicans that couldn't run for dog catcher now challenging him. It's actually going to be a positive. Bill Weld, give me a break. So double standard. This is so important. This is actually a really, really serious point, which is that everything that we conservatives advocate for, we live out in our daily lives. Everything that we say, we live out. The freedom to own a firearm or not own a firearm. The freedom to send your child to a better school if you're living in a failing public school district. To have your tax dollars follow you to a private school or parochial school, or if you're homeschooling. The left, they say, oh, we hate guns. They walk around with armed guards. The left, we love the environment. They fly around on Gulf Streams. The left said, we want to tear down the walls. They live in these gated communities. The left is inherently contradictory. Why is that? It's because for conservatives, principles matter to us. Principles are actually the most important thing. What's the most important thing? Thank you. It's true. What's the most important thing to the left? Power. That's all they care about is power. They will say anything and do anything to get power. Who's the best example of this? Joe Biden. My gosh. What? By the way, what has happened to Joe? Sleepy Joe. I'll tell you. And I kid you not. Go to my Twitter feed. I mean this deathly serious. To any Democrat, pay them for their lunch and show them the 3 minutes that I just tweeted of what this groping. It is serious. I mean, he's a creepy person. No, serious. There's something not right there. I mean, you watch this video, and I mean, there's even Democrats that are coming out and saying this is not right. And so anyway, seriously, watch the video. If you have not watched the video, I encourage you to. It's so beyond. If a Republican did this, there would be an FBI investigation into him. No, seriously. There would be charges already filed. They would have witnesses from 30 years ago, testifying. And I'm half kidding, by the way. So Joe Biden, I'm going to tell you right now, I will make a guess. I do not believe he will be the Democrat nominee. I don't believe it. Because for the first time in my life that I'm seeing something, and from my understanding, most of American political history, you have a candidate actually pretending to be more radical than he really is. Usually it's the exact opposite. Usually like the radicalism leaks out. For example, Barack Obama running for president 4 days before says, I can't wait to fundamentally transform this place. Oh, great. That's what everyone says about things they love, right? My church is the greatest church in the world. I can't wait to fundamentally transform it. Oh, yeah, that's a normal thing. Or I'm in a great marriage, and once I fundamentally transform my wife, we're going to be really, really happy. That's what you say about things you love, right? My favorite vacation spot right by the water. It's beautiful. Sun comes up. I'm going to fundamentally transform it. And then once I do, then of course. But usually the radicalism leaks out. And Joe Biden's the exact opposite. Joe Biden is trying to become more radical. Why is that? Because Bernie Sanders is calling the terms of engagement for the Democrat Party. He's the center of gravity. And I'll prove it to you. This most ridiculous, asinine idea, and I've heard a lot of beauties from him recently, is the idea that terrorists while they're in prison should vote. Seriously. Have you ever heard this? That Boston bombing terrorists should have the right to vote. Now, let's extrapolate this, okay? I will disprove this rather quickly because it sounds, the way he justifies it to a younger audience or a misinformed audience, it sounds like, oh, well, that sounds rational. We should always, we should not take away rights even if someone does something bad. Oh, okay. Let's play this out. So Bernie Sanders says he wants to let the Boston bomber vote and terrorists vote. This is what he says. He says rights should not be taken away just because you're in prison. So should prisoners be able to own guns in prison? Maybe have pistols? Should prisoners be able to peacefully assemble wherever they want in the prison at any time? Should they be able to have protests against the warden? That's a First Amendment right. Should prisoners not allow a prison guard to walk into their cell at any time? That's a Fourth Amendment right. And here's the kicker. And here's the one that anyone in media, this is the one that I've been saying and I've been tweeting out. Bernie Sanders says, well, we cannot remove them from the Democrat process. Sounds good, right? Sounds really good. But wait, Bernie, if you don't want to remove someone from the Democrat process, that means they can vote. Yes. Does that mean they can also run for office while they're in prison? Think about it. Some of these rural towns, the prison is the population. They could have their own mayor. They could run for Congress. They could vote themselves out of prison. And this position, which might be the stupidest position I've seen out of the Democrat clown show so far, and it's only April. It's like, to put it in 2016 terms, Trump still had not announced for another 7 weeks, just so you understand where we are in the cycle of calendar. And this is how you know it's the position of gravity. This is where you know it's the center of gravity. The entire Democrat field immediately, oh yes, I agree. That prisoners should be able to vote. Absolutely, yes, 100%. Yeah, every single one of them. As soon as Bernie has a position, they all agree. That's how you know where the center of gravity is. But how did this happen? It happened for two big reasons, and this is not talked about enough. Number one, the universities have been corrupting the minds of our youth, and they've been accelerating it. The universities today are worse than they were 10 years ago. They're worse than they were 5 years ago. They're worse than they were 2 years ago. They're worse than they were one. They've become so militant and so brazen and so committed to the destruction of this country, they don't care anymore. It's worse. I've been doing this for 6.5 years now. It's worse today than it was a year ago. It's worse today than it was 2 years ago. And I'm not talking about the students. I think we're winning more students today than we ever have. I'm talking about the culture. I'm talking about the professors. I'm talking about the administration. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. Now, that's the first reason. And of course, all the other cultural reasons. But here's the second big reason. And this is why Joe Biden is going to lose in a beautifully tragic Shakespearean way. He really will. It's going to be one of the most, honestly, I can't wait to see it because I don't think he's a very good person. Okay? I really don't. But this is the part that no one talks about. Donald Trump committed an act of theft against the Democrat Party. He stole their traditional blue-collar base away from them. Think about it. Think about it. So Donald Trump stole away their registered Democrats that were coal miners, that were Catholic value voters, that Reagan Democrats in Ohio that honestly looked at Mitt Romney and Barack Obama and were, might have stayed home or they might have just voted for Obama because Mitt Romney was not exactly the most compelling candidate of our time. My gosh. I could do a whole routine on him too, but I won't. So we might need his vote for a Supreme Court nominee in some point. No, seriously. I'm gonna wait until another time. Yeah, no, that's the Biden thing. It's just creep. All right, that's enough of that. You could take that off the screen. Make me nauseous. No, seriously, it's 3 minutes of this. It's unbelievable. Thank you, by the way. I appreciate it. Donald Trump stole the base away from the Democrat Party. He stole the base away. And so what happens when your base gets stolen away? You have to find new voters. You have to find new people because your party has been torpedoed. Now, some suburban women that used to be Republicans are becoming more Democrat, but they're not radicals. And Joe Biden's trying to win them over. What's their new base? Young people and illegals. Young people and illegals. Young people and illegals. Young people and illegals. And I'll tell you the other portion that Trump is stealing away really quickly. Legal Hispanics and blacks. He's stealing them away very quickly. Very quickly. Very quickly. I see Major Williams. Where's Major Williams? Major's right there. He's running for mayor. You should help out Major Williams, by the way. He's running for mayor of Pasadena. Stand up, Major. Help him out, by the way. Help him out. We need more black Republicans running for office. We need Hispanic Republicans running for office. We need more young people running for office. We should, even if you don't think there's a chance, even if this is a Democrat plus 92 district, doesn't matter. Run, organize, get the name out. Because people, this is what the left did to us 50 years ago. They run full ballots because eventually there will be a time where the work that you put in, the conversions that you make, the doors that you knock on, that will be a tipping point. That will be a difference. And so this is why the center of gravity has happened, because if you look at it as a paradigm, this more centrist area of the party is just vacated. It's been disappeared. And now Bernie he is the Moses of their party. He's everything. no one dares disagree with them. And so they have the most ridiculous asinine positions that you could possibly imagine that can be easily debunked. And I just want you to imagine for a second, it's just this, if Donald Trump, who would never do this because he's very logical, rational, and loves his country, would say, I want terrorists to be able to vote from prison. He's funded by the Iranians, you know, Iranian collusion or some crazy thing like this, right? And Bernie says this, and the media, the New York Times writes a story. Well, Bernie Sanders is starting a valuable conversation around, you know, felons voting in prison. It's amazing. And so I don't think Joe's going to take it. I really don't. I don't know who it is. In fact, I'm as bold to say as I think there's someone who is not announced for president yet that might come in. I could be wrong. By the way, I always say this. I mean, I don't want to say I know for certain, but I mean, it could be Kamala Harris. My gosh. Whew. It could be any one of these people, but I actually think the field is so lackluster right now that somebody could come on. You know, it could be an Al Gore, it could be Michelle Obama, it could be one of these guys. It could be John Kerry, who can't ride a bicycle. You know, no, seriously, I'm telling you, it could be. But all that doesn't matter. All that's irrelevant. Here's where it matters in California. The message: you guys have to go back to Orange County and take back at least one or two of those House seats. You just have to. You just have to. And the ballot harvesting thing is unbelievable. I talk about voter fraud more than almost any other speaker. And it is so important because people say voter fraud. Oh, there's no voter fraud. Oh my gosh. It's not just, it's voter registration fraud. It's the ballot fraud. It's the double voting. It's the dead people voting. It's the lack of the purge of the people actually on the voter rolls. And for whatever reason, I can't figure it out. Republicans just like ignore this issue. I'm not saying all Republicans because I know you guys don't, but it seems like the party just doesn't fight, does it? It's just this is everything. It really is. And just to give you another idea of how the left is relentless. I don't know if you know this. 12 states have already passed a national popular vote where they say they're going to put their electoral votes to whoever wins the national popular vote. Colorado just passed it. Illinois, New York, your state has passed it. You guys know this? Maybe you don't. It disenfranchises yourself. The left doesn't stop. If they get rid of the Electoral College, forget about it. It's done. It's over. And I'm from Illinois, so my vote doesn't matter either. So it's like, I understand the frustration, but if you think there's voter fraud now, just wait till Los Angeles actually matters, okay? I mean, they will run up the score in a way that you wouldn't possibly ever believe. And so you put all these things together, I mean, I say this all the time, most important election of our lifetime. You can make an argument that every election is actually the most important election because it's the only election in front of you and the moment is the actual current moment is the most important thing. But we have been blessed with such an unbelievable president who, for the first time in American history, we have a president who's being attacked for doing what he said he's going to do. That's never happened before. It's never happened. And he's fulfilled every promise. He's a promise keeper in chief. And the opposition, if they get back into power, they will be ruthless. They will be so ruthless. And they will get back in power at some point. But Trump was never supposed to win this election. We all know this. They tried to enact the insurance policy. They thought the economy was going to tank and tumble. Now we see 3.2% GDP growth. We see ISIS totally and completely destroyed, massive deregulation, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, amazing on every single front. And so to tie it back to campuses, and then I think I can ask a couple questions, I was told. I always love to do that just to get some audience interaction. To give you a point of optimism is that when I go to campuses, I find that students are not inherently opposed to our ideas. It's that they're not exposed to them at all in the first place. It's that the left does not want the debate, dialogue, or discussion that college campuses should be. They're not marketplaces of ideas. They're islands of totalitarianism. And that's how you know you're on the right side of the debate. The side that tries to shut someone up, the side that tries to silence others, the side that tries to be afraid of other opinions, that's the side that has no confidence in their convictions. That's the side that is on falsehoods and on lies, the side that does not want to have cross-examinations. If you look at college students that are conservative, they have to go through leftist garbage every single day, every hour. And all we ask for is just for a couple hours every semester for a conservative like myself to be able to come on campus. And this is somehow the most controversial thing in the history of their university. Just a couple hours of a voluntary event And all of a sudden, this is something that deserves widespread outrage. But this is the thing, when students actually hear the message, when students actually hear the values of free markets and constitution and individual initiative and being a victor and not a victim and being thankful you live in America, not angry you live in America, all of a sudden, they say, I've never heard this before. That's the number one answer I get. We've never been taught this at all. And if you need further proof, not to give your money to your alma mater unless you went to Hillsdale, I mean, that's all I got to say. I mean, seriously, divest your money from your colleges completely. And so I think we have some mics here. I do want to have some questions. I don't know how we're doing on time, but I'll talk until they kick me off stage. I hope you guys are having a good time, because I am. So you having a good time? Good. Can we do questions?
Thank you.
With 5 minutes?
5, 7.
Where's the question?
Okay. We got hands up. There we go.
Got a lot of people. Yeah.
Hi. The first is just a yes/no for you, and then the other one is your opinion on what to do. The yes/no is, when you go in and speak to the colleges, do you bring voter registration forms?
Yeah, we do.
Excellent. The other question I had is I don't know if a lot of people know this, but after the 2016 election, the liberals came in and started an organization called runforsomething.org. And what it is they're trying to get people to just run for anything at the bottom levels. And, you know, you were talking about schools and stuff. There's a school board somewhere in California, I forget which one, but a Muslim just got on the school board and they're starting low. So my question for you is, how do we get that word out to more conservatives to run for something?
Right now, I mean, everyone should run for something. I mean, seriously, I mean, run for school board, run for water reclamation district. I mean, there's so many positions. And the left, they love government, so they just create positions for themselves. But I think a functioning party should be doing this. And I love Ronna McDaniel, who's running the RNC. There's just a lot they have to focus on. I really do. But it's just, we've had 40 years of mismanagement where we're becoming a grassroots party because of Trump. My fear is that we're going to lose this moment of Donald Trump, where we have so many people that are wearing these beautiful hats. I see these hats, and I guarantee you, every one of you want to be helpful, right? You want to do something. And I've never seen, I mean, I haven't been around as long as you guys have, so you guys can tell me, but the enthusiasm and the willingness to help that this president has brought out of the woodwork is remarkable. It really is. And the amount of former Democrats that are now, are any former Democrats here, by the way? Anyone former? Thank you for amazing. Give it up for the former Democrats, by the way. Amazing. And so at least two big takeaways here. Run for office or help someone run for office. School boards are the most underappreciated, important positions that people have just given up. We've just sacrificed school boards for far too long.
Got a question right there.
When I was at UC Berkeley, 78 to 83, it was liberal, but it wasn't crazy leftist. But when I went to school, you wouldn't have moved me. You wouldn't have changed my belief in the country or Christianity or any of these things. But now the kids get there, and like you said, 3 months later, they've flipped. What would you say to sending kids to school so they know what they believe before they get there and they won't be so easily flipped?
I mean, look, I'm not against sending. Look, first of all, I could do a whole spiel. I could do a whole hour-long speech. First of all, we have way too many kids going to four-year college in America. Far too many kids. We need more carpenters, electricians, HVAC, entrepreneurs, people in our military, gap year. We have the national graduation rate is 41%. And so we all ask, it's graduation season right now. I guarantee you, all of you are going to ask your high school seniors that you meet, your nieces, your nephews, your sons, your daughters, where are you going to school? Not why are you going to school? I've said it. Have you said it? There's almost like an expectation that you're less successful, you're less smart, when in reality, it is the people that are working in the trades, it's the people that are working in the two-year technical and the coding and the computer science that are going to do way better than the people that are studying, Western medieval lesbian dance theory or whatever they teach now. And you think I'm joking, that's a real thing. And so that's the first thing, is that if you have high schoolers, anyone have high schoolers out there, sit down with your high school sophomore and junior and say, what's your plan? And your plan should not be, I'm going to find myself and I'm going to go to a school with a good football team and borrow a bunch of money to study things that don't matter, to go find jobs that don't exist. That's not a plan. A plan would be, take a gap year, make some money, go to community college. If you want to go to four-year school, there's really only 4 or 5 really good reasons to go to four-year college. If you know you want to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or something very, very specialized. That's really the only, if you just are going because your friends are going or your parents tell you, you're trying to tell me you're going to borrow $100,000 because your parents told you? It's your money. It's not their money. What are you doing? And this is such a backwards culture. And so that's the first part of it, is that the left has pushed the entire cultural narrative to get as many kids into these indoctrination factories as possible. And then we'll deal with the consequences later. But if you know what you want to do and there's a liberal school that will get you there, then go. That's fine. But don't just go because you need to go to a college. This is what I find. Students are like, well, I'm not sure what I want to do. I didn't get into my top 3 schools, but now I have this school and I'm not that passionate about it, but I have to go to college. No, you don't. I never went to college, by the way. I never went to college, okay? By the way, some of the most wise, hardworking, amazing people I've ever met in my life never went to college. And people say, oh, Charlie, you're less smart, you're less informed because you didn't go to college. That's a logical fallacy, and it's an insult to the 65% of Americans that never went to college. Right. It's calling 65% of our country stupid. It's calling our military stupid. It's calling our veterans stupid is what it is. And I actually think you become smarter if you don't go to college. If that's if you want to do something that doesn't require a degree, if you need to be a lawyer, if you need to be a doctor, if you need an engineer, of course you should go to college. By the way, when you go become pre-med or there's less liberal nonsense when you actually know your career path. The real indoctrination happens when they meander through. Like, I'm not sure what I want to do. And then, what a guidance counselor at the college, like, oh, we got a fresh one right here. We'll turn you into a communist before the end of the first semester. No, seriously. But if you come in and be like, I have these credits from my local community college. I want to do pre-med to become a nurse or a doctor. Oh, okay. Well, this is a great school for you. Then you'll do this and you do that. Okay. But if you want to go, I don't know what I want to do. I kind of want to discover myself. College should not be about intellectual exploration. It should be about career preparation. If you're going to college to find yourself, you're going to lose yourself. Yes.
Yeah, this is going to have to probably be the last question. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you for being here today, Charlie. Oh, please respond to this. We need a counterbalance or a balance backed by far-left liberal protesters boycott conservative on-air hosts such as Bill O'Reilly and Judge Jeanine Pirro to convey to the sponsors that we need to take actions against them as well if they cave into the demands of liberal groups. How can we fight this?
I mean, the left has an entire boycott industry built around having fake outrage around, conservatives saying things that are out, maybe not even saying out of the mainstream, just for whatever reason they think of. And look, part of it is just also pursuing alternative media. And, I'm really pressuring the president and the administration to go after the tech companies. I think it's far too much. I think Google and Facebook and these monoliths have way too much power over our society. And so I will make a shameless self-plug. Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely.
There's one very specific way you can all help me, which is, I don't know if anyone listens to podcasts. If you don't, if you have a smartphone, go to the podcast app and subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show. It comes out in a couple days. I have an exclusive interview with Donald Trump Jr. And we want to get our subscriber count as high as we can. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we have any millennials in the room? Raise your hand. Here, ask Major. He'll help you, right? There you go. Ask Major. But please, just the more people that are subscribing the first week, the more people that will hear this very message that I just talked about. So we want that, right? Because we want it to be, featured on the Apple page. So go to the podcast app, even on your Droid, press subscribe. And then the last way you can help, of course, is just help out Turning Point USA. We're not a think tank. We're a battle tank. We're fighting every single day on our college campuses. We're honestly becoming more than just campuses. We have amazing leaders like Brandon Tatum and Candace Owens and just some of the great leaders, right? We love Candace, right? Love Candace. And we're becoming kind of the young rebellious fighters that the left, fears. And I think we're making a big difference there. And so to kind of tie it all into a knot, you guys are really the base. And we have a very important election coming up. Get involved however you can to the president. Chip in money to his campaign. He's going to need every bit of it. Knock on doors, make phone calls. You guys have important races here in Orange County. But don't forget what I talked to you about the culture stuff, because while I'm very invested personally in getting the president reelected in 2020, I'm also making sure that we're not a socialist country in the next 20 years, because that's equally as important. So anyway, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. God bless you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.